do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's Twitter, _ Jonathan Smith. Maybe you're watching on YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. You can also download that Indy Sports Ticket app wherever you get your apps. Got a nice show lined up today. A lot of hoops. I won't lie to you. Okay, Pacers played last night. I've got some thoughts, or really some in-depth stuff. We're going to take a little deep dive today into the struggles of Purdue. Jim Coyle, he's going to join at 11:20 to talk a little more IU basketball, a little bit more about that win over Purdue and what the rest of the season looks like for the Hoosiers. But we're going to start with Purdue because they've lost 4 in a row. And yeah, like they had this awesome stretch where it looked like they were just never going to lose again. There was so much hype and excitement around, Braden Smith, best point guard in the country, best player in the Big Ten, all that stuff. Okay, and Purdue was ranked 7th in the country. And then they lost 4 games in a row. Now, Purdue fans, you're going to be upset. But you shouldn't react to this too much. Seriously. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. You're still going to make the tournament. You're still probably going to be like a 4 seed. Okay, as long as you don't draw, the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, then you should be fine. The last time Purdue lost 4 games in a row was the 2019 season. So it's been a while since Purdue has been in this spot. I think that's part of why Purdue fans are overreacting. But the question is, what happened? Why has Purdue lost 4 in a row? What changed? And honestly, I don't think Purdue fans should really be all that concerned. You lost 3 road games against good teams. Winning at Michigan, one of the 25 best teams in the country, it's not easy. Winning at Michigan State, a team that I believe is ranked 9th in the country right now, is not that bad of a loss. You lost at Indiana, and anytime you are the road team in this Purdue versus Indiana rivalry, good luck. And then their 4th loss came at home to Wisconsin when Tanji went absolutely insane. He scored 32 points on 10 of 15 shooting. Tanji's probably been the second best player in the Big Ten this year. Okay, so you've had 4 really tough games, 3 of them on the road, and they all just kind of came in a row. It's a tough break, okay? And look, losing road games in the Big Ten is normal, okay? The one home game you dropped came when one of the better players in the Big Ten went crazy. Sometimes that happens, okay? It happened in the Ohio State game when Purdue hosted Ohio State, and you didn't go crazy when you lost that one. You said, you know what? A 20-something-year-old had a night. It just so happened to be in Mackey. It happens sometimes, okay? It does. But I do believe that there are 2 reasons why Purdue is now on this 4-game losing streak. Let's start with the more obvious ones. 1, they're just playing better teams now. They started 11-2 in conference play. In those 13 games, they only played 2 of the current top 5 teams in the Big Ten. That's it. Okay, the other 11 games came against, teams, 6th and lower in the Big Ten. And let's be honest, the Big Ten isn't great this year. It's not. The middle of the Big Ten is teams like Nebraska, who's good, might sneak into the tournament, but there's just not a lot of great there. Okay, so you opened, the first, 3/4 of your Big Ten schedule was against the teams in the Big Ten that weren't as good. That's why you got off to such a good start. And the reality for Purdue is their record against good teams is bad. Seriously. When you look at the current top 25, Purdue has played 9 of those teams, okay? 9 of the 25 teams that are currently ranked. They only won 3 of them. They beat Alabama, Maryland, and Michigan. Okay, and they've lost all their other games against the teams that are currently ranked. They lost to Texas A&M, Marquette, Auburn, The second time that they played Michigan. They lost to Wisconsin and Michigan State. So they are 3-6 against the current top 25 teams, the teams that we know right now that are absolutely good at basketball. And look, that's not a knock on Purdue. Okay, there are plenty of teams in the country that wouldn't even go 3-6 against that stretch of teams, against those not 9 opponents. And when you look at Purdue, part of this, I think, is just a scheduling team or a scheduling thing. Okay, they've had to play against, 3 of the better teams in the country in a pretty short span. And the one game that was against Indiana. And for Purdue, it will always be hard to win on the road at Indiana because that game means so much. Okay, so a large part of why they've lost 4 in a row now is because they've just played better competition. And unlike last year, this Purdue team isn't good enough to make the Final Four. Okay, and when you're not Final Four good, you lose on the road at Michigan State, and you lose on the road at Michigan, and you lose on the road in rivalry games, and you lose at home to a team in Wisconsin that looks like they're good enough to make it to the Final Four. At least, they were for that week. Okay, so that's just the reality of it. This Purdue team just isn't as good as 3 of the teams that they've played on this 4-game losing streak. The other thing that really pops out about Purdue and this 4-game losing streak that they're on is the turnovers. Okay, once again, they started 11-2 in Big Ten play. Okay. When they started 11-2, in those first 13 games in Big Ten play, they were forcing just under 15 turnovers per game. It was like 14.96. Now, against better teams over the last 4 games, they're only forcing 7 turnovers per game. Can't have that. Okay. In fact, when you look at the 2 games that they lost in those first 13 Big Ten games, they lost the turnover battle against Penn State, 24-16. Look, if you turn the basketball over 24 times, you're not beating anybody. And then Ohio State had a player go crazy from 3. Okay, they only lost the turnover battle once in those first 13 games, and it was against the Penn State team that likes to pressure and play fast and all of those things. Okay, the other thing about Purdue's defense that has to be discussed, and we've been talking about it all year, is this team just doesn't protect the rim at all. They didn't have a block against Indiana or Wisconsin. Okay, and when you're not forcing turnovers, once again, only forcing 7 a game, and you're not blocking shots, you're not going to beat teams. No blocks against Indiana or Wisconsin, 1 block against Michigan, and then they had 3 against Michigan State, only averaging 1 block per game on this 4-game losing streak. Okay, and by the way, that's lower than their season average, which wasn't very great to begin with. Okay, they are at the very bottom. They are 18th in the Big Ten in blocks per game. So they have to find a way to get stops a different way because they just don't have great rim protection. And when they went, 11-2 to start Big Ten play, they got those stops by forcing turnovers. Braden Smith has great instincts. He kind of knows when to go for steals. We haven't really seen that during this losing streak. Okay, CJ Cox, he's doing his best, but he is a freshman, and his defense, I feel like, has kind of deteriorated a little bit over these last 4 games. And that leads me to my next thing. They don't have great perimeter defenders. And this is, once again, a size thing. If Purdue is a little bigger with their guards, it would be easier to keep guys out of the paint, which will kind of help shelter their lack of rim protection a little bit. Okay, because when you're bigger, you can just be a little more physical. You can bump guys off. Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, CJ Cox, Miles Colvin, and Jakari Harris are not going to do that. Okay, all of those guys try hard on the defensive side of the ball, but none of them have the ability to take the best player on the opposing team out of the game like Lance Jones did last year. That was the most valuable thing about Lance Jones. You can say, hey, Lance, go defend the other team's best player, and we feel pretty good about that. because he was a really good, defender in addition to being, a guy who could handle the ball alongside Braden Smith just to kind of take some of the pressure of running the offense off of him. Lance Jones could also guard. And the guards on this Purdue team, once again, they try hard. The effort's there, but they just don't have any great perimeter defenders. And so because of that, because of their inability to block shots, they have to force turnovers, and they haven't done that in these last 4 games. Okay? When you're undersized, you have to force turnovers, and they haven't done it. Okay? And that is the biggest thing that they've struggled with in these last 4 games. Okay? Like they aren't turning teams over like they were earlier in Big Ten play. The other thing that's been going on for Purdue is Braden Smith hasn't been scoring the basketball. Okay, he had 8 points against Indiana, 17 against Michigan State, 6 against Wisconsin, and he had 24 against Michigan. Braden Smith is very similar to Tyrese Halliburton. Okay, the Pacers are, I forget the number. I think they're like 20-2 when Tyrese Halliburton scores 20 points or more. Purdue is 8-1 when Braden Smith scores 20 points or more. Okay, Braden Smith hasn't hit that 20-point mark in 3 of these last 4 losses. He has to be better offensively. Okay, he also had 6 turnovers against Indiana. That cannot happen. That is unacceptable in every way, shape, and form. You're a third-year starter. You're the best point guard in your conference. You can't turn the basketball over 6 times. That can't happen. And he also has to score. He can't shoot 2 of 8 from the field. And this goes back to a very well-known fact, one that, Indiana did an excellent job exploiting in their game, is that this Purdue offense is entirely dependent on Braden Smith. He's the only guy who can run the offense. That's why he plays 40 minutes a game. And that's not an exaggeration. If they are not, winning by a lot or getting blown out themselves, Braden Smith is on the floor. And 2 of these 4 games during this losing streak, Braden Smith has played all 40 minutes. Okay, so he has to score the basketball, and he just hasn't done that in these last 4 games. Okay, so the answer to Purdue winning games is really pretty simple. Get Braden Smith in spots where he can score, force some turnovers, because 7 a game, it's just not enough. My thing is, you aren't blocking shots anyway, so if you take a gamble trying to generate a turnover and you give up a layup, who cares? Okay, if they can get Braden Smith in spots where he can score the basketball, if they can find a way to force some turnovers, then they're going to win games going forward. Okay, and in all honesty, I think that they're going to figure it out at some point. I do, just because I trust Matt Painter that much. Purdue can win out. They can. They are more than good enough to do it. Their rebounding issue is gone. They actually out-rebounded every team that they've played in this 4-game losing streak, with the exception of Michigan State, who out-rebounded them only by 2. It was 25-23. So they've solved that issue, right? Because that was, the big concern the first time that they played against Indiana. Okay, the concern was how are they going to hold up on the glass? And they gave up 8 offensive rebounds in that first half, only gave up 5 in the second half. And from that point forward, rebounding for Purdue hasn't really been an issue. So that has been solved. And that's obviously an important aspect for this Purdue team, given that they are undersized. Okay, now they just have to force a few more turnovers and get Braden Smith scoring the basketball, which should be easy because Braden Smith's a really good player. He is. And you would think that with the way that Purdue plays defense, that they would be able to force more turnovers than the 7 that they forced on average in these last 4 games. Okay, so they're going to figure it out. That I have absolutely no doubt about. I think that they're going to win out. I think they'll beat UCLA at home on Friday night. I think they'll beat Rutgers at home. I'd be really surprised if they didn't beat Rutgers at home. And I expect for them to go on the road and beat this Illinois team that's really been struggling here as of late. So Purdue, they're going to be fine. They're going to be in the NCAA tournament, and they've got a bunch of guys that have played in the tournament before. They have experience. Those things really matter. So they're going to get to the tournament, and I think that they're going to be just fine. Okay? They've got a few games to kind of iron out all of these issues. It's Matt Painter. He's one of the best coaches in the country. And so if and when he figures it out, Purdue will be just fine. Big show today. Jim Coyle, he's set to join the show here in about an hour, 11:20. He's going to join. The Indiana Pacers lost last night to the best basketball player on the planet, Nikola Jokic. It was on full display last night. So I've got thoughts on Jokic. I have thoughts on the Pacers losing that game, things that bothered me about it. If you have thoughts on that game or on Purdue, head over to YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, subscribe, hop in, the chat, type out your thoughts on the Pacers and Purdue and even IU. Okay. You can also tweet at me at __ Jonathan Smith on Twitter, like John Buzzard just did. John, I will read that tweet live on the air when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
It may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Really liking these new intros. Those are awesome. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Twitter, the Indy Sports Ticket app that you can download wherever you get your apps, or maybe you're just listening on good old 1430 AM. Just hit on Purdue. Jim Coyle, he's set to join the show coming up here in about an hour, where we're going to talk a little more IU basketball, all that good stuff. But before he joins, because we do have an hour, the Indiana Pacers lost last night to the Denver Nuggets. First loss since coming back from the All-Star break. And, it just looked like a back-to-back for the Pacers. The first half for both teams, really, was sloppy. Each team turned the basketball over 10 times. Both teams turned the ball over a lot in the second half as well. It just didn't feel as obvious as it did in the first half, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But each team had 10 turnovers. Each team scored 14 points off those turnovers. Tyrese Halliburton and Nikola Jokic I loved watching them play in the first half. Tyrese Halliburton only took 3 shots, which bothers me. All of them were threes. Nikola Jokic only took 5 shots in the first half. None of them were threes, if I remember correctly. And watching two passive stars who would clearly rather pass the basketball than score it themselves is so much fun. Okay, as I just highlighted, neither one of these guys took a ton of shots in the first half, but Nikola Jokic had 9 assists in the first half. And Tyrese Halliburton had 8 assists in the first half. That's crazy. Okay, watching two teams that are led by players that control the game through vision and passing is so much fun. The ball moves more. Everyone's involved. There's a lot more movement in the offenses. Like, if, the narrative that every team in the NBA plays the same way is just wrong. It's wrong. If you don't believe me, go back and watch that game from last night and tell me that both of those teams play like the Boston Celtics, who shoot, 47% of their shots come from 3, which is not true for either the Pacers or the Nuggets. Okay, it was just, it was so much fun to watch because, teams were playing just good team basketball. The first half was incredibly sloppy, though. Players not named Jokic or Halliburton had trouble not turning the ball over, especially Andrew Nembhard, who had 4 turnovers, 4 minutes into the third quarter. Okay, and you aren't going to win any game in the NBA if you turn the ball over as much as the Indiana Pacers did. Okay, you can't turn the ball over that much and expect to win. It's just not a good recipe. Okay, I believe they had 19 turnovers on the night. No, excuse me, they had 18. The Nuggets had 20, but the other difference was offensive rebounds. The Nuggets had 14 offensive rebounds to the Pacers 8. So if you turn the ball over 18 times and you give up 14 offensive rebounds, chances are you aren't going to beat anybody. That's just the reality of it. And it was a really weird game for the Pacers because the one thing that they do really well is not turn the basketball over. They're 4th in the NBA, or they were 4th in the NBA going into that game, in turnover percentage, which is just the percentage of your possessions that end in a turnover. Last night, though, it was rough. If they don't turn the ball over 10 times in the first half, then, they're probably up going into the break, and then things just wind up being a little bit different because things got out of hand, wouldn't be the right word, but, the Nuggets separated themselves a bit in that third quarter. Okay, the Nuggets outscored the Pacers 36-25, and Nikola Jokic did the thing that I just really want Tyrese Halliburton to do. Jokic was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to, take this game over. He scored 10 points and had 5 assists in the third quarter. While he did that, Tyrese Halliburton hit a 3 and tallied 2 more assists. And I'm going to continue talking about this. Tyrese Halliburton has to raise his play when the Pacers need it. Like, I don't mind him being passive. I kind of like it. Okay, like it's, like getting other players involved is a good thing. I think that when players get to touch the ball offensively, it makes them defend a little bit harder. It makes them just a little bit more willing to dive on the floor for a loose ball. So, like, the fact that he's passive and the fact that he wants to get Obi Toppin and Nembhard and Nesmith and all these other guys involved, like, that is a good thing. But there are stretches where he has to learn how to be selfish. Okay, because the Pacers needed him to be that in the third quarter, and he took 2 shots. They were both threes. Through 3 quarters of play, Tyrese Halliburton hadn't taken a single shot at the rim, and he'd attempted 0 free throws. That cannot happen. In fact, Tyrese Halliburton took his first non-3-point shot with about 3 minutes or a little over 3 minutes into the fourth quarter. Every other shot he'd gotten up until that point had been a 3. And that's just like, that doesn't work. And guess what? The one time he went to the rim, he got fouled, he went to the line, and he made 2 free throws. He has to get to the rim more. Okay, like he has to do it. And, Tony East, who's a friend of the program, I'll probably get him on sometime next week. That's kind of what I'm thinking. He asked him, because I asked him to, he asked Halliburton about the lack of aggression and why he didn't get to the rim more. And here's what Tyrese Halliburton had to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's part of the game, tape doesn't lie, film doesn't lie. Like, go watch what they're doing in my pick and rolls. Jokic is, almost in a soft double the whole time, forcing me to, and they're really pulling over, forcing me to throw the skip the majority of the game. So it's hard for me to get in the paint off the pick and roll when they're, up at the level or doubling most of the time. So I'm really just trying to find my spots. I know I got to be better. I'm better when I get in the paint. The more paint touches I have, that really, increases aggression. I feel like that is a part of aggression at the same time. But I mean, kudos to them. I thought Jokic did a good job of staying on the ball and making me have to make, different sorts of passes, the skips, and not, they did a good job taking away the pocket as much as they could. I think, obviously Nikola is not a guy in our league that you would say is this elite defender, but he's, one of the highest IQ guys in the league. And I thought he did a great job of, in the pick and roll, making me able to make different reads. And, I thought they did a good job protecting the paint, making me able to, play outside more. But, I think that I could definitely have been better, but I think that they had a good little, a good plan there, and Nikola did a good job.
Tyrese Halliburton right there talking about his lack of paint touches and shots that came from, inside the arc in that game. And it's just so frustrating because he's such a smart player. Like this is what, his 7th year in the NBA, sixth year, something like that. Like, you really don't have the answer to, besides the skip pass. The other thing is, like, he's incredibly talented. Like, if he wanted to, he could go by Jokic. I promise you that Tyrese Halliburton could find a way to go by Jokic. He has to be more aggressive when the Pacers are struggling like they were against the Nuggets last night, especially in that third quarter. Okay, he can't only have 5 shot attempts through 3 quarters because that's what he had. Okay, and it was really frustrating. Speaking of frustrating, he got frustrated. John Buzzard, who was, boots on the ground last night in Gamebridge, he tweeted at me earlier. He said that he went to the game last night, and he said, coming out of the last timeout, Shepard and Hallie seemed to be heated. Hallie was consoled by Turner, looking watery-eyed, was odd. Brown had backed down Hallie, repeatedly scoring on him. Tyrese wasn't exactly playing tough defense and probably got called out. Good. He should be called out. No way around it. Okay? Yeah, I mean, no notes. It's good that 2 things are good. 1, it's good that he got called out. 2, it's a good thing that Shepard called him out and that he feels comfortable enough to do that. And, the defense last night wasn't great. Christian Brown, I think, had like 12 points in that fourth quarter, 10 or 12. the Nuggets shot the crap out of the ball. A large part of that was Aaron Gordon just went absolutely crazy. He was 11 of 17 from the floor. He had 25 points, and it wasn't like he was, finishing around the rim. Like he hit a lot of jumpers. And I think that when you play against the Nuggets, at least when you watch teams play against the Nuggets, the idea is we're going to let everyone take jump shots except for Michael Porter Jr. Like Aaron Gordon's a guy who's shooting like 40% from three on the year, but for his career, like that's not who he is. And even if you go back to the last time that the Nuggets played on national TV, they implemented a style pretty similar to what the Pacers did. Okay, like don't let Jokic take, a ton of shots. Let Aaron Gordon and these other guys like force them to knock down a bunch of shots. And Aaron Gordon did that. Christian Brown, he did that as well, even though a lot of his shots were kind of more around the rim than anything else. So it was just one of those nights where, like NBA players actually made shots, which I know is a very, very surprising thing. But to the Pacers' credit, going into that fourth quarter, down double digits, I just kind of expected them to roll over because, it's not an uncommon thing when teams are playing on a back-to-back. When they're playing their second game of a back-to-back, if they go into the fourth quarter and they're down double digits, you'll see them kind of roll over. But to open the fourth quarter, they made a real effort to kind of make a push because Jokic was on the bench. And if you're going to make a push against Denver, you got to do it while that guy is on the bench. So they did. Like, they tried to cut it to single digits. They had a few chances to do that, but they couldn't really score on those possessions. Jokic came back into the game with about 7.5 minutes left. The Nuggets were up by 10. And the Pacers, to their credit, cut the lead to 7 with about 6 minutes left to go. And they would never get closer than 7 points to the Denver Nuggets. Okay, they had multiple open threes that they could have hit to cut the lead to 4. Like Nesmith had 1, Miles Turner had 2, Tyrese Halliburton had 1. And then that was kind of it. And like you just knew sitting at home or at the game that Nikola Jokic was eventually going to lead the Nuggets on a run. Like you knew that it was coming. Like that there was going to be a stretch where Jokic was just like, was just like, all right, guys, I'm really good. So let me just put this game away. And it came with about 4 minutes and 45 seconds left. It was 111 to 104. Pacers down 7. Like they couldn't seem to get any closer than that. And the Nuggets scored on all 7 of their final 7 possessions. It went Jokic assist to Brown, Jokic assist to Brown, Michael Porter Jr. assist to Aaron Gordon, but that assist only happened because Jokic got doubled and made the right pass. And then there was another Jokic assist to Brown. And then Jokic had another assist to Michael Porter Jr. And then Michael Porter Jr. got his own bucket. And then Jokic hit a little flip shot, and that was the game. That was it. He was, Nikola Jokic was just like, we're going to score every single time because we're going to get a good look every time that we come down the floor. And the Nuggets ended up winning that game, 125 to 116. And it was because the best player in the world made all the right plays for the Denver Nuggets late. And when the Pacers needed Tyrese Halliburton to kind of be the alpha in the third quarter, he didn't. And then in the fourth quarter, when they made a push, every time that they had a chance to cut the lead to 4, they missed their shot every single time. Okay. By the way, Nikola Jokic finished with 19 assists in the game. That's insane. 18 points and 19 assists and 9 rebounds. Absurd. And then Tyrese Halliburton, his box score numbers look good. Okay, like if you didn't watch the game and you just wanted to kind of peruse the box scores, he finished with 19 points and 15 assists. That's great. That's great. But like that's kind of what we expect from him. And I think every single Pacer fan is just waiting for him to take that next step and to become a legitimate scorer. Because like we've seen him do it. Like we've seen him go for 30 against the Knicks in a playoff game in Madison Square Garden. Like the guy can clearly score the basketball. And I'm not asking him, to average 28 a night because that's not who he is. But from time to time, when the offense is reeling a little bit, he has got to look to score. He's got to say, you know what? You guys go to the corner. You other guys space out to the left wing. Pascal Siakam comes at a ball screen. We're going 2-man game until we're back in this thing. And they didn't do that, and we didn't see Tyrese Halliburton become aggressive and actually look to score the basketball until the fourth quarter. He has to look to score the ball sooner than that. When we come back here in about 3.5 minutes or so, I got more stuff on Jokic because I never get to talk about him unless the Pacers play against them after the Colts season is over. So I've got a few thoughts on Nikola Jokic, and then we'll get into Top 10 Tuesday, all that coming your way here in about 3.5 minutes.
Texting enrolls you in a recurring automated marketing text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
The team's looking good this season.
I think so. Man, I miss playing football. Being young with unlimited energy to burn. Ever since I turned 40, I just can't find that fire I used to have.
Think you could be lower testosterone?
What do you mean?
All guys lose their edge when they turn 40. The body has less testosterone. That's why I take Nugenix Total T.
I've heard about Nugenix. That really works?
Since I started taking Nugenix, I'm lifting like when we played for Coach Carter. I feel more energized at work. It's even spiced up things between me and the missus.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles for people to try?
Yep, send a text. It's that easy.
Text RULE to 42424 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T. It's the #1 selling testosterone boosting brand at GNC and Walmart. Do it now and they'll also send you a bottle of Nugenix Thermo X, their newest, most powerful fat burner ever, absolutely free. Text RULE to 42424. That's RULE to 42424.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. It's only Tuesday. It feels much later in the week than just Tuesday, which is problematic for me, which means it's just going to feel like a super long week, even though Thursday and Friday are going to be great. Going to be live from the Combine. Can't wait to do that. The NFL Combine does start tomorrow, though, with like kickers, punters, and long snappers. So, yeah, turn your TVs to that, I guess. Or you could continue to watch basketball, that's probably what I'm going to do. You know, we got Indiana. They're playing tomorrow night. Jim Coyle, he's set to doing the show coming up at 11:20. We'll probably talk a little bit about that game and some of the others. But last night, we got Pacers and Nuggets. This Jokic guy, man, dude is just insanely good. Here is Rick Carlisle after the game talking about Jokic and really just the game in general.
Yeah, I mean, he had 18 points and 19 assists. And, Miles is picking up full court, So they do some things unconventionally because of his unconventional abilities and skills and talent. You can talk about a lot of different things, but the possession battle, when you factor in the difference in rebounds and difference in turnovers, is as big a story of the game as anything. And they had 20 turnovers, so there you go.
Coach Carlisle right there talking a little bit about the game, about the turnovers, about Jokic, 18 points, 19 assists. I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, the guy only took 5 shots in the first half, and the Nuggets were +7 with him on the floor and -1 with him off the floor. Like that's crazy. He controls the game in an incredible way while looking like a bouncer at a club in Serbia who doubles as the plumber of that same club. I mean, he's just incredible. Like his presence on the court just makes everything so much easier. Sure, he only had 6 points on 5 shots in the first half, but he also had 9 assists and 2 steals. And it's just so rare to find players on NBA courts that are just smarter than everyone else. You heard Halliburton earlier in the show. He was talking about how, sure, Jokic isn't a great defender, but he's, one of the smartest guys in the league. So he's always in the right spot, and he's able to dictate what you do. And we, rightfully so, by the way, get caught up in athleticism in the NBA all the time because it's the most athletic league in the world in any sport, top to bottom. Okay, but when you're smart, like Jokic is, also very skilled, I don't want to, skim over that. When you're smart and you can control games the way that he does, like you don't have to be overly athletic. Okay, Jokic had 3 steals last night, and it's just because he was in the right spot on the defensive side of the ball. Okay, and John Buzzard, who tweeted at me earlier and said that Tyrese Halliburton got called out in a timeout for his lack of defense. Like that's the thing. Like you don't have to be some great on-ball defender in the NBA. Like you just have to be in the right place. Okay, if you can be in the right spot, then you can have a positive impact, and we saw that last night from Nikola Jokic. He also picked apart the Pacers defense because he knew where everyone was going to be at all times. It's why he had 10 assists at the 11:08 mark in the third quarter. Like that's just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Okay, like he's so smart and just such a good passer that he makes everyone else better. Like the Jokic bump, that's what I call it. Like it's a real thing. And it's special. Like no matter who plays alongside Jokic, you were automatically better. Which is, I think, a rare thing for superstars to have, because a lot of times, like guys come in and you have to kind of adjust to whoever the best player on your team is, like Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade and Kevin Love and Anthony Davis. Like they had to adjust to play alongside LeBron because he can be kind of tough to play with. And that's just not the case with Jokic. No matter who you are, he raises your floor. Aaron Gordon looked like a bust as the number 2 overall pick to Orlando. And then he gets traded to Denver. And now he's playing beside Jokic, and he's one of the best role players in the NBA. He's played 6 years in Orlando, 5 in Denver. Right? He has 2 seasons with each team where he averaged 15 points or more. When he was in Orlando, he never had a season where he shot 50% or better from the field. And in Denver, he's never had a season where he hasn't shot 50% or better from the field. Like Jokic just makes your life easier. And Aaron Gordon isn't the only example of this. For the last 4 years, Russell Westbrook has been a role player for 4 different teams. His best season as a role player is this year with the Nuggets so far alongside Jokic. And it's not some coincidence. Okay, Nikola Jokic just raises the floor of all of his teammates. He does. And he does it as much as any player in the history of the NBA. And we got to see it on full display last night as he just picked apart the Indiana Pacers. He's the best player in the world, and he's on a short list of players in the history of basketball that if he's on your team, like, you automatically have a chance to win the whole thing. Okay? Like, it's incredible. Incredible. And it inspired today's Top 10 Tuesday. These are top 10 get a good shot guy. And I don't mean one-on-one, you get a shot for yourself. I just mean in general. Okay? Because the reason why the Nuggets have a chance to win the title this year is because they get a good shot every time down when Nikola Jokic is on the floor. And a large part of why the Pacers offense is, been really good as of late is because of Tyrese Halliburton and his ability to generate a good shot for the Pacers almost every time down. Okay, so very quickly, because I got about, 8 minutes till break, here's the list. Number 10, I've got Jalen Brunson, very good passer. Okay, if he can get to the elbow whenever he wants to, and if he gets to the elbow, then he's probably going to make the shot. Okay, and he's a good passer who plays alongside guys like Bridges and Towns, who just kind of know where to be. Number 9, I've got Kevin Durant, not a great passer, but he's the best scorer in the history of basketball. He by himself can get a good shot all on his own, whenever he wants. Number 8, Steph Curry. He's a little different. He's more dangerous when he doesn't have the ball, which is really weird. And the number of free buckets I've seen the Warriors get, especially here as of late, since that Jimmy Butler trade, where Steph Curry's running off screens and then someone slips to the rim and they get a layup. Like, he creates good looks for guys when he doesn't even have the ball. It's pretty crazy. And then, of course, his ability to score one-on-one is pretty incredible. Number 7, probably too low, so I'm actually going to move him. So number 7, I'm actually going to do Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 7. He's probably going to shoot the ball when you need a bucket, but he's the best scorer in the NBA right now. Scores on all 3 levels. Scores from the mid-range a ton. He's top 10 in the NBA in mid-range jumpers taken per game. He's expanded his range a little bit. He's shooting more threes this year, and he gets downhill to the rim and to the free throw line whenever he wants. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 7. Number 6, I've got Jason Tatum. He's averaging a career high in assists this year. The Celtics are really good, so Jason Tatum isn't going to get his due. But, man, he's playing really well this year. He's more of a scorer than he's a passer, but he can just kind of get to his spot whenever he wants to, and he's 6'10". Okay, I wish he'd take a few more mid-range jumpers because he's really good in that area, but that's just not the way that Boston plays. You want to talk about a team that just chucks threes, it's Boston. 47% of their shots, almost half of them, come from 3. But Tatum is their best player. He's an excellent scorer who's improved a ton kind of in that playmaking area. That's why he's averaging a career high in assists. So Jason Tatum at 6. Number 5, I've got Tyrese Halliburton. He can get to an open shot whenever he wants. And I think, I feel like I've just hammered this point home today, which is really frustrating. Halliburton can get to the rim or, to, the elbow whenever he wants to. He can. Like he's that good of, a ball handler, and he's that good one-on-one. And he can get to that step-back 3 whenever he wants to as well. The issue is he gets to, a spot where he can score, and he just is like, nah, I'm good. It's frustrating. And that is the next step for him, just looking to score a little bit more. And if he was more aggressive scoring the ball, I'd have him higher on this list, but he's not. And because of that, he's 5th. The ability to pass the basketball speaks for itself. He's one of the best passers in the NBA. That's why he's on this list of guys that are just great at generating good shots, not necessarily just for themselves, but also for their teammates. Number 4, I've got LeBron James because he's LeBron James. Okay. He's got, he's Tom Brady when he's out there. He has all the answers. Okay. And he's still athletic. He's arguably the best player ever. Okay. And he's, the reason why I don't have him higher is because he's 40. And sometimes I don't think he remembers that he's 40. And so, he'll take a bad shot from from time to time, and it's a little annoying, but still, like that guy, he can do whatever he wants on the offensive side of the ball. Number 3, I've got Giannis, another guy on this list who's averaging a career high in assists. And the thing with him is like he's going to get to the rim whenever he wants. And over these past few years, and we're really seeing it this year, he's developed as a passer. He's averaging 6.5 assists per game. That's a career high for him. His ability to drive and kick has improved tremendously over his career. Another guy on a short list of if this guy's on your team, you can win a title. Number 2, Luka. He's just a ball handling, slightly more aggressive version of Jokic. Okay, like he has all the answers, and that's what happens when you play in the second best league in the world for 3 years, then come over to the NBA. Like he's going to get to his spot. If you don't double, then he's probably going to score. If you do double, then he's going to find whoever's open, and then that guy's probably going to score. It's why he was able to take the Mavericks to the finals last year. And then number 1 is Jokic. As I've waxed poetic on for quite a bit today, like he's just incredible. He can post up and score because he's the biggest dude in the NBA. He's also the best passer in the world, and he's a very willing passer. Like that's what he wants to do, and because of that, the Nuggets get a good shot every time down the floor, and that's what makes him the best player in the world. And the interesting thing about this, for me at least, is trades have been made, and the Lakers, who I can't stand probably more than any other franchise in the NBA, like they have a chance to win the whole thing just because they have 2 guys on this list of guys that could just generate good looks either for themselves or for someone else, in Luka and LeBron. And like I'm sure I'm going to talk about this a lot. Like I would rather have Luka and LeBron James than a whole bunch of size. No way around it. Speaking of which, they play the Mavericks tonight. Luka's first game against Dallas since the trade. I would bet over on everything. Over points, over rebounds, over assists, seriously, I would bet over on every single Luka Doncic stat tonight because he's probably going to hit it because he's going to be upset and he's got some FU to him. And he's going to be an absolute dog. So bet the over on every single Luka stat. Yeah, I'm probably going to watch. I am going to watch the game. There's no maybe about it. And I'm going to hate myself the entire time that I watch it. So that happens tonight. The other thing about this list that I find important is, having Halliburton 5th. Like the best version of him gives the Pacers a chance to beat anyone. He just has to look to score the basketball a little bit more than what he does. Okay. And if he can do that, then then they're going to be good enough to beat, the Knicks or whoever they end up playing in the playoffs because he's that good of a player. Like this guy was 3rd team All NBA last year. I mean, he's one of the 15 best players in the world. Okay. He just has to be more aggressive and if he does that, then I feel great about them in just about every single game that they play. Coming up here in about 25 minutes, Jim Coyle is set to join the show. We're going to talk a little bit of IU basketball. Should be fun. Jim does a really good job covering IU sports in general, not just hoops. So he's set to join the show coming up here in about 25 minutes. And we come back here in about 5 minutes or so. I've got just some quick thoughts on the NFL Combine, and then we'll talk about Purdue and why they've been struggling over their last 4 games. All that coming your way here in about 5 minutes.
Let's do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. 20 minutes. Jim Coyle set to join the show. It'll be good because Jim Coyle usually does a pretty good job. We'll talk a little more Indiana basketball, just kind of what the rest of the season looks like. NFL Combine starts up coming up on tomorrow, Wednesday. We got kickers, punters, and long snappers. Yeah, so Dan and I, we will be out at the Combine on Thursday and Friday. Can't wait. It's going to be a blast. No super major storylines coming out of it yet. Shedeur Sanders, though, this is the only storyline, really. Shedeur Sanders is not going to participate. And some people will be upset by this. I don't really care. Genuinely. Like, I don't know why any of these, like, super big time, guys that could potentially go 1, 2, or 3 overall. I don't know why any of them participate in the Combine. Okay, because everything that these scouts need to see is on tape. The only thing that you can do is show up, not throw the ball hard enough, not throw the ball far enough, not run a fast enough 40. Okay, the only thing that you can do is lower your draft stock. That is the only thing. Like that, Shedeur Sanders, who could potentially go number 1 overall, the only thing he could do is hurt himself. Like, I don't think Cam Ward should show up either. Okay, the NFL Combine is for the guys who played like small Division 1, maybe like high level Division 2. Maybe they played at like an FCS school like North Dakota State. The NFL Combine is a great place for those guys to show up and be like, hey, look, like I ran this 40-yard dash. It's like clearly I'm, fast enough to play in the NFL. This was my 3-cone drill time. This is, like I did, 27 reps of 225. So like I'm clearly strong enough to play offensive line in the NFL, so on and so forth. So like that is what the Combine's for. Okay. These guys that are going to be, first, second, third overall picks, they don't need to be there. The only thing that they could really do is hurt their draft stock. And, Purdue is in the process of hurting their seeding. They've lost 4 in a row. At one point, they were ranked 7th in the country, and then they lost 4 in a row. And now they're like 19th or whatever. Okay. And Purdue fans are going crazy. I don't think that you should be. Like, you haven't been here since 2019. Okay. It's been since the 2019 season that Purdue has, found a way to lose 4 games in a row. But what has happened? Why has Purdue found themselves in this spot? I don't think Purdue should be all that concerned, really. You lost 3 road games against good teams in the Big Ten. That's going to happen sometimes. Okay. You lost at Michigan, at Michigan State, at Indiana. And then your 4th loss came at home to a team in Wisconsin that looks like they're good enough to make the Final Four. And it was a game where, Tanji had to go for 32 on 10 of 15 shooting. Okay, like losing road games in the Big Ten is pretty normal. Okay, and the one home game that you lost came when, arguably the second best player in the Big Ten behind Braden Smith went crazy. And like that happens sometimes. Okay, now, in terms of this 4-game losing streak, for me, there are 2 things that really kind of pop out and explain why they're losing these games. Okay, first and foremost, is Purdue just hasn't been good against good teams this year. Okay, like of the teams that are currently ranked right now, Purdue is 3-6. They beat Alabama, they beat Maryland, and they beat Michigan. Okay, they've lost their other games against teams that are currently ranked. They lost to Texas A&M, Marquette, Auburn, Michigan a second time, Wisconsin, and Michigan State. They are 3-6 against the teams that are currently ranked and against the teams that everyone knows are good. Now, like, this isn't a knock on Purdue. Okay, like there are plenty of teams in the country that wouldn't go 3-6 against those 9 opponents. The reality, though, is they aren't as good as the best teams in the country. Okay? Like they aren't a Final Four level team like they were last year. Okay. And like that's part of why they've lost 4 in a row. Like they've just played better competition. And unlike last year, this team just doesn't have a generational college basketball player on it. So they lost those games. Okay. The other thing that sticks out as to why Purdue can't win these games and why they're on this 4-game losing streak, aside from the fact that they're playing against better teams, is they aren't forcing turnovers. Okay, in this 4-game losing streak, they're only forcing a little over 7 turnovers per game. That's not enough. They haven't won the turnover battle in any of these games. In any of these 4 games, Purdue has lost the turnover battle in each and every single one. The other thing that sticks out, besides in the 13 games in Big Ten play before the losing streak started, they were forcing just under 15 turnovers per game, right? They're forcing like 14.96 turnovers per game in Big Ten play, their first 13 games of which they started 11-2. And that number's been cut in half. They're only forcing 7 turnovers per game now. Okay? And when you look at the 2 games that they lost in those first 13 Big Ten games, one came against Penn State on the road, where they lost the turnover battle 24-16. Against Ohio State, they won the turnover battle, but Ohio State had a kid go crazy, and sometimes that happens. They only lost the turnover battle once in those first 13 games, and it was that game against Penn State of which they lost. Okay, so that paired with all the other things that we know about this Purdue team just don't really mix well. Like Purdue, like they don't protect the rim at all. They didn't have a block against Indiana or Wisconsin. Not one. They had 1 block against Michigan. They had 3 against Michigan State. So they're averaging 1 block per game in this 4-game losing streak. That's lower than their season average. And they're at the bottom of the Big Ten in blocks per game. So they have to find another way to generate some stops. Like they don't, and I don't know how they're going to do it against the better teams in college basketball. How many like legitimately great defenders does Purdue have? None. They don't have any great defenders on the interior or on the perimeter. Okay, like Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, CJ Cox, Jakari Harris, and Miles Colvin try hard on the defensive side of the ball. Okay, like they play their butts off. They compete. It's part of why I like watching Purdue play, right? Because this is a team that always competes and always plays hard. But Purdue doesn't have the ability to take the best guard on the opposing team and make them irrelevant. Say what you want about Indiana, but Anthony Leal's kind of been that guy for them this year. And Miles Rice was that in the Purdue game. And Purdue had a player like that last year. His name was Lance Jones. Lance Jones filled so many holes for the Purdue team last year. He could like legitimately play point guard. Like he could run the offense and they could move Braden Smith off the ball, or they could actually take Braden Smith out of the game for like a 4-minute stretch if he needed it, because they had Lance Jones who could actually run the offense. Okay, like Braden Smith has to play every minute of every game that they play for Purdue to have a chance. Okay, and the other thing that Lance Jones did is he was an elite defender. He could defend the opposing team's best guard and give them trouble. He was tough. He was quick. He was a physical guy as well out on the perimeter. He'd bump guys, hand check, do all that kind of stuff, and not get nabbed for it. Okay, and so like they really miss him. They miss that second guard alongside Braden Smith, who can kind of cover up all of the things that he doesn't do well, which is play defense. And, also they're missing a guy who can just relieve some of that pressure. Like that's who Lance Jones was for Purdue last year. The other thing with them is because they don't have these great defenders, it's hard to keep teams out of the paint. Like, because that's obviously the answer, right? Like if you don't have guys who can block shots, then the goal would be to keep the opposition out of the lane. Okay, but because Purdue's so small on the perimeter, it's tougher to do that. Okay, so because they don't have any great defenders out on the perimeter, because they can't keep other teams out of the paint, because they can't block shots, they have to force turnovers. And in these last 4 games, they have not done that. Okay, they haven't. That's the biggest thing that they've struggled to do in these last 4 games that's led to all of these losses. They aren't turning teams over like they were earlier in Big Ten play. Because, look, Purdue's good enough to beat Michigan and Michigan State and Wisconsin on the road, at home, wherever. The thing is, they have to force turnovers, though, in order to be able to do it. Like, look, if you can beat Alabama, you can beat anybody. Okay? The other thing that has to happen for for Purdue, is Braden Smith has to score. He has to. And he hadn't done that in this 4-game losing streak. He scored 8 points against Indiana, only made 2 shots, scored 17 against Michigan State, only scored 6 against Wisconsin, and he had 24 against Michigan. Purdue's 8-1 when Braden Smith scores 20 points or more. Like, he's very similar to Tyrese Halliburton for the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers are like 20-2 when he scores 20 points or more. He didn't hit that mark last night, and they lost. But Purdue, 8-1 when Braden Smith scores 20 points or more. Braden Smith hasn't hit that 20-point mark in 3 of these 4 losses. He has to be better and more efficient offensively. The assists are great. They are. But he has to put the ball in the bucket. And he hasn't done that in these 4 losses. They haven't. And, the answer to them figuring out how to start winning games again feels pretty easy. Get arguably the best player in college basketball, Braden Smith, get him going again, get him in spots where he can score the ball, okay, and force turnovers. Those 2 things. If Purdue can check those 2 things off their list, then they'll start winning games again. Okay? Like this team is good. They are good enough to win out. Honestly, I kind of expect them to, because I just kind of expect for Matt Painter to figure things out. Okay? They should be able to beat UCLA. They should be able to beat Rutgers and Illinois. All right? These last 3 games are very winnable. Okay? They're going to make the tournament. The question is now, what seed are they going to be? Because if they lose out, they'll probably end up on the 7 line. But, we'll kind of have to wait and see what they do. But they're more than good enough to win out. Okay, the rebounding issue that they had earlier in the year is gone, really, ever since that second half against Indiana in the first game against Lafayette. They've been much better rebounding the ball. On this 4-game losing streak, they out-rebounded their opponent in 3 of the 4. The one game where they didn't out-rebound their opponent came against Michigan State, who only out-rebounded them by 2. Just force more turnovers and get Braden Smith scoring the basketball. I also think it'd be beneficial if they ran more stuff for Fletcher Lawyer. That's a guy who can really score the ball and take some of the pressure off of Braden Smith. Run that guy off a million screens, let him catch and shoot from 3, let him take that little 1-dribble pull-up that he just seems to never really miss anymore. Get that guy more involved as well, because he's a junior who's been around and has had some big games for Purdue in his first 2 years there. And I'll watch Purdue play sometimes, and it's just it's like he's not even on the floor. It's like, hey, Fletcher, we know you can shoot the ball, but go stand in the corner, and we'll see if your guy helps. They'll have Braden kick it out to you. That's what the offense feels like for Fletcher Lawyer sometimes, and he can do so much more than that. He's a legitimately good player who's more than just a catch and shoot 3 guy like Miles Colvin and CJ Cox and all these other guys. And if he's going to play 30 minutes a night like he usually does, then he needs to be more than just go spot up. They need to, I think, do a better job of creating offense for Fletcher Lawyer, because that'll just take some of the pressure off of Braden Smith. Okay, because Mike Woodson, he talked about it after they beat Purdue. He's like, look, Lawyer is their 3rd guy, which is true, and we know that because of what we've seen from him these last few years. But it feels like in this 4-game losing streak, they haven't used him, Fletcher Lawyer, as much as they could have. And that's, that's problematic for Purdue. When we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, Jim Coyle is going to join the show. We're going to talk a little IU basketball. What's the rest of their season look like? Who's going to be the new head coach? All of that kind of stuff should be good, should be fun. Jim Coyle of ISB Sports is set to join the show when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket over there. If you want to head over there, subscribe. Maybe you're watching on Twitter or via that Indy Sports Ticket app. Joining me now, Jim Coyle, publisher over at Hoosiers.com, also hosts a show in the mornings for ISB Radio. Jim, what's going on, man? How are you?
If I was any better, I'd be you, Jonathan. But just wait for this winter weather to get the heck out of here, although today is looking pretty decent.
It is. I think tomorrow's supposed to look pretty good, too. I'm hoping that we're almost out of it, because I'm with you, man. I'm from the South. I don't do snow. I don't do ice. I just want warm weather so I can play golf and get really mad while I play golf, you know?
You know, it's funny. I still suck at golf, but all I've been thinking about is just wanting to get out and play. To just want to break these doldrums, man. I hate winter. I'm from here. I'm from the South, Southern Indiana, but I'm tired of it. I'm like, I was thinking the other day, you know, Indianapolis, the biggest growing area is the north side, and I'm like, too far north for me.
No, I totally I get that. So I'm really curious your thoughts, just going back to IU and Purdue playing on Sunday. Obviously, huge win for Indiana. What were your thoughts on what Coach Painter had to say about the IU job after the game?
Well, I thought they were kind of spot on. He's a guy. He's one of those guys that can say what he wants to say, but he's usually right. He's not going to say something controversial. He's not going to say something out of school. He's been around, man. He knows. He was an IU fan. He grew up an IU fan. I think his dad played football at IU, and he could have easily gone and played at IU had it worked out that way. It just didn't. But there's a lot of truth to it. I think the fans are so jacked up for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're just sick and tired of losing, and that I get, because that just shouldn't be the case. I mean, you work with Dan. Nobody knows more about Indiana basketball than Dan. He's for all the different reasons. But even from my standpoint, I get it's easy. This should be a winning place. It's a sleeping giant. It has all of the resources needed. You just got to have the right guy, and they just have been horrible at that. The fact that they've been able to revive a corpse that was Indiana football, man, that should make Indiana basketball cake.
It should be. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. They have all the resources, and by resources, I mean the NIL budget is more than enough to be able to field a really good team. My question, because I was looking into this yesterday, you know, Archie Miller was here for 4 years, and he got fired after not making the tournament once. There's a chance, you know, I know Mike Woodson's retiring at the end of the year, but it feels like he's kind of being forced. There's a scenario where he makes the tournament in 3 out of the 4 years that he's here, and then he gets forced out. What is the standard? Like what needs to be the consistent finish for Indiana basketball for fans to be happy?
Well, just making the NCAA tournament is not it. That should be an automatic. Just to be blunt, you look at whether it's Bill Self, you know, those guys make the tournament every year. Tom Izzo making the tournament every year. There's a reason they make the tournament every year. That should be ground zero. It's what you can do from there forward. But Indiana hasn't been living on ground zero, not making the tournament and then just making it in, having to play in, then losing your first game. They won one game a couple of years ago and then got blown out by Miami. Before that, they had to play in and got blown out by St. Mary's. They just have not been competitive, really. They've just barely made it in. So that is not what Indiana fans want. It's not what they're looking for. It's not what it should be. This should be a program that competes year in, year out for Big Ten titles and a deep run in the NCAA tournament. But you have to have the right guy. And Kirk Cignetti shows that, how that can happen. And basketball is 1,000 times easier than football is. But we've also seen in college basketball a complete leveling of the playing field. And I use Kansas as a perfect example. You look at Bill Self, his teams have not done that well the last 2 years, and their NIL budget is up there with anybody's. But they had an NIL budget prior to everybody else, and now all these other teams are on equal playing field, and it's not working out too much.
Joined by Jim Coyle, who hosts a radio show for ISB. You can watch that show on YouTube. You broadcast on Twitter as well, right? Or I guess it's called X now.
Yeah, we're down in Evansville on the ESPN station there. We're up in Fort Wayne on 1380 The Fan, and Hammond, Chicago on WJOB as well. Radio stations around the state and YouTube and on Twitter. You can find us anywhere. Even we'll put it out on Facebook, wherever. Indiana Sports Beat Radio, it's easy to find.
So you mentioned, Indiana has to get the right guy. Who is the right guy for Indiana basketball?
Boy, is that a $64,000 question, because everybody has, not only does everybody have a different opinion, now there is not a name that is going to go up without a certain faction of people saying, oh, no, hell no. And it could be Bruce Pearl, who is just, to me, he's just on that wrong side of the age thing, which if you only want 5 or 6 years, well, that's doable. I don't know if he would ever consider leaving Auburn now, but that's a short-term situation, but it's better than the 4 years they had with Archie, 4 years they had with Mike Woodson. But then you've got guys that are the perfect fit from on paper, Chris Beard, and that is a name that I'd say a majority of IU fans would like to see, because he does check a lot of boxes. Unfortunately, in my opinion, Indiana is not going to go that route. And I still haven't answered your question, because the truth is I don't know, because you've got the Ben McCollum at Drake, you've got Mark Byington at Vanderbilt, Scott Drew is he a legitimate name out there? He's doable from a financial standpoint. So Mick Cronin would love to get the heck out of Los Angeles and come to a place like Indiana. But I don't know where that's what I keep asking. Who's that first, second call? No answer here, brother. I just had a bunch of names I could throw at you, but Chris Beard is the one that the fans want. And boy, that would check a lot of boxes. And it's a shame, because he wins. He's won everywhere he's been. He obviously can turn programs around fast. He did it again at Ole Miss, a place that is not traditionally a basketball place, but he's also doing it in the toughest conference in the country. But then you look right up the road at Starksville at Mississippi State, and Chris Jans is doing a hell of a job, and he could be gotten financially. The coach at Clemson, why am I drawing a blank on his name, that is originally from Evansville and was a teammate of Calbert Chaney on Evansville Harrison High School's basketball team. So all kinds of names out there still to crunch in there, but I don't know who that next guy is going to be. Brad
Brunell, that's the head coach at Clemson.
There you go. Thank you.
I got you. Joined by Jim Coyle, who hosts a radio show for ISB Radio. You mentioned that you didn't think that Indiana would go after Chris Beard. Why do you think that?
I think that just the so-called baggage that he has, Indiana is real. It's a delicate situation for Indiana, and if you want to even further prove that point, they were supposed to wear these Fear of God uniforms that was celebrating. I don't know if it was celebrating Black History Month. I don't know what it was celebrating, but Kanye West used to have something to do with that line. No longer does, but Indiana still chose not to wear those uniforms that they were supposed to wear, and the word is it was because of that potential connection. So if they're leery about a connection that doesn't even exist, I can't imagine putting their number one position. Even football doing well, but the basketball coach is still the king, and I don't see them putting a guy on the throne like that. Although it would sure cure a lot of bills.
Yes, it would. Why do you think Steve Alford's name has yet to come up for the job?
That one is easy to me, and this is a conversation I'd love to have with Dan, because I know he is a big fan of Steve as a potential coach. And Steve Alford has a ton of wins, been successful in that regard. But if you look at his tournament record, he's been a D1 basketball coach in the NCAA for 30 seasons. And in those 30 seasons, I think he's made only 13 NCAA tournament appearances. And his ceiling is 4 Sweet 16 appearances. And I think 3 of those came at UCLA. So that's a Sweet 16 appearance once every 8 years. I just don't see him as a successful tournament coach. He hasn't done it. And that's just why. If that was going to happen, I think that would have happened by now. And he's a great guy, and there's no doubt about that, and successful, like I said, in his situation. But I don't know how that would work now. I think Indiana is ready to move on, and they need something different. They have got to cleanse this thing. The country club atmosphere that's in there and all that, that's just got to be cleansed and rebirthed, so to speak.
Is there a guy that you absolutely do not want to get the job?
You know what? People ask it all. I don't have, I don't have a favorite or a non-favorite. Now, there are people that I don't think would be a good choice, and for different reasons. But like Bruce Pearl, gosh, man, would he be great? But do you want to bring in a guy who's going to be 65 and you're going to have to do this again in 5 years? So, not that from a non-success, he'd be awesome. Rick Pitino, man, everybody says they scream when you see his name. And I'm not saying he's the guy that should come in because he's 72 or whatever. But he's got more energy than anybody on the current IU basketball staff. And let's see, what's he doing? Oh, yeah, he took his team that he put together this year, and they're in the top 10. So, man, there are so many great coaches out there. But, no, I don't know if Mick Cronin would be a good fit, although he's been a successful coach, and he wants out of UCLA, and I think he would relish the Indiana job because it is a sleeping giant. But he's made comments of late that were kind of similar to Woodson and blaming fans, blaming his players and this, that. I'm like, yeah, that's never a good look when you do that. That shows a lack of accountability. Now, sometimes it's true, but it's just usually not a good look when a coach does that.
Agreed. Joined by Jim Coyle, who hosts a radio show for ISB Radio, talking a little Indiana basketball, just the future and who they could potentially hire. I do want to transition now to this team that's playing a little better here as of late. Obviously, a big win on Sunday. And my takeaway from that game was,
where's that effort been?
You said what?
Where's that effort been?
Yeah. Where's that defense been? Like, because if they defended like that all year, like they would be ranked. We would have no questions about really much of anything. Like, where do you think this defensive effort's been all year from IU?
I think it's been a combination of things. I think that they never really felt good as a unit because it was not a good unit. Mike Woodson has insisted on running that 2 big lineup almost all season until here of late. And well, they've had more success, especially once Renew got hurt and he was forced to do that. And they started playing better because it was a different style of lineup. So that's partly where it has been. And so guys have not been able to get into a comfort zone role. Anthony Leal, who's not a great player, but man, oh man, he worked his butt off on defense the other day, along with Miles Rice, and shutting Braden Smith down. They played better. When I watched them play zone against Michigan State, the whole time I'm thinking, they're playing better man-to-man defense in this zone than they play better when they play man-to-man. It's just I think it has to start in the coaching, in the practice arena, because if you're not doing it there, you're not going to do it on the floor. And if you're doing it in practice, there's no reason for you not to do it during games. So I just don't think there was enough emphasis on the right roster or right lineup selections. Now they've been forced into it, and their backs are against the wall. You add Purdue to that. But they played their best defense against the best teams. So it is a great question, one that I don't know. I just think that this team has been just discombobulated all season long. They've not fell into comfort with their roles until now, because it's been kind of a forced situation where they're comfortable. They kind of know who's, Mackenzie Mbako played 9 minutes the other night. Nobody expected that. That means other guys are doing things. Trey Galloway had 9 stinking assists. That's mind-boggling. Indiana had very, very few turnovers, which was shocking. The fact that team, they were able to beat Purdue with Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal, and Luke Goody, that's kind of impressive, because from a talent level, that's not the most talented basketball players in Division I.
It's not. Joined by Jim Coyle, who hosts a radio show for ISB Radio. What is it about Purdue that just brings out the best in Trey Galloway? I feel like his 2 best games this year were at Purdue, and then on Sunday when they hosted Purdue.
Well, it's the rivalry, of course, is there. He grew up with that, and he grew up in the heart of it because he went to Culver Academy, which is north central Indiana, much closer to West Lafayette. So very attuned to the Boilermakers and this rivalry. And unfortunately, too many kids on these teams don't know that. But there are a few, the Indiana kids. Well, it's the 3 guys that I just mentioned that played the best against Purdue were the Indiana guys, the in-state guys. And you had the same on Purdue's roster with Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer and Trey Kaufman-Wren and Caleb First. That's a ton of in-state talent playing there, which is a very, very cool thing. So that's what made this year's games so awesome. It was the old school rivalry, man, because you had guys that are in tune to it, but they've got to keep that. That's the thing. Indiana has zero culture right now. Purdue is about culture, but Indiana could win. They can. I cannot believe that they still have a shot at the NCAA tournament, Jonathan. It's like a cat with 11 lives, not even 9. But they have to win. They've got 4 games left, 2 at home, which you have to win both those home games, and they have a West Coast swing against Washington and Oregon. Washington absolutely cannot lose that game, and if you win the Oregon game, you're probably in the NCAA tournament. As unbelievable as it is to say.
Do you think they make it?
Well, if they go 3-1, they would have to win at least 1 to 2 games in the Big Ten tournament. But if they can go 4-0, which they should win both of the home games, and they should beat Washington, which leaves that game at Oregon to be a huge challenge for them. If they win that game, they're in. I would pretty much say that for a positive. If they don't, they still have the opportunity through the Big Ten tournament to win a couple of games.
I hope they make it. This team's been so up and down. It feels like they're like it's weird. Like they're 2-4, I think, in their last 6, but it feels like they're playing some of their best ball of the year. Last thing for you, Jim, and I'll let you go. Why do you think Purdue has struggled in these last 2 weeks?
That's kind of easy. While having great players, like Braden Smith is a super good point guard. He's going to be an All-American. He's going to be all Big Ten again. But, man, my man is – I don't know that he's 6 foot. They list him at 6 foot. I don't know that he is. And when you get defenders that will really defend him, UConn did it last season in the national title game. Indiana was able to do it. Shut him down. They also, along the way, shut Trey Kaufman-Wren down. So you just cut off the 2 main sources of revenue for Purdue in those 2 guys. And when you shut them down, you shut Purdue down, because even Fletcher Lawyer had 20 in that game, but not nearly enough to overcome Indiana holding the top 2 scores for Purdue to half of their average. So that's the thing about Purdue. They don't have Zach Edey. They don't have Mount Edey, who there was no stopping him. Well, now there is stopping Purdue. Trey Kaufman-Wren is a great stretch 4, but he is kind of being forced to play a lot more in the paint. And that works if you are playing a team that matches up. But when you play a team like Indiana, who has an Umar Ballo, it's probably not going to work out well. And it didn't in either game.
It didn't. I think you're exactly right. Jim, thanks for your time, man. You were great as always.
I appreciate you, brother. Anytime, Jonathan. Tell Dan I said, hey.
Will do. That is Jim Coyle. You can listen to him in the mornings on ISB Radio. He is also a publisher at Hoosiers.com. Follow him on Twitter at Jim Coyle ISB. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, we'll put a bow on today and talk a little Indiana Pacers basketball. It's going to be good.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on Twitter, __ Jonathan Smith. You can watch the live stream there. Follow me too. Why not? Or maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps. Big game tonight. Luka Doncic and the Lakers. Ugh, what an awful phrase. Play against the Mavs for the first time tonight since the trade. That game will be very interesting. But we had an interesting game of our own here in the great state of Indiana last night with the Pacers losing to the Nuggets. The game was just incredibly sloppy, but I still had just an absolute blast watching the game. Because when you watch two players like Tyrese Halliburton and Nikola Jokic play against each other and combine to shoot 8 shots in the first half, yet have quite a bit of impact on the game, I find it fun to watch. It was a sloppy game. Nuggets turned the ball over 20 times. The Pacers turned it over 18 times. Both teams turned the ball over 10 times in the first half, each team scoring 14 points off those turnovers. And watching these two passive stars, because that's really what they are. I think Halliburton and Jokic would be much happier scoring 0 points and dishing out 25 assists per game than they would, scoring 30 and having 8 assists. Okay, that's just kind of how they're wired. And neither one of them had to take very many shots in the first half. As I said, Jokic took 5 shots in the first half. Halliburton only took 3. But they both still had just a tremendous input on the outcome of the game. Jokic had 9 assists in the first half, and Tyrese Halliburton had 8. And it was just fun to watch because when you have players, more specifically, when your best player passes the ball like those two guys do, it just inspires you to cut. It inspires you to play a little bit harder on defense. It inspires you to give the ball up because you know that there's a pretty decent chance that you're going to get it back. And because of just how these two teams are structured around these two stars that look to pass the ball, the games are just more fun. The ball moves more, players move more, everyone's involved, and it's just a blast to watch, even though that first half was incredibly sloppy. It seemed like everyone not named Jokic or Halliburton had trouble not turning the basketball over, especially Andrew Nembhard. He had 4 turnovers at the 8-minute mark in the third quarter. And look, if you're the Pacers, you aren't winning any NBA game if you turn the ball over 18 times and give up 14 offensive rebounds. That ended up being the difference in the game. Sure, the Nuggets turned the ball over 20 times, but they won on the glass, and the Pacers did not. Okay, and it was a really weird game for the Pacers because they don't turn the ball over very often. They're 4th in the NBA in turnover percentage, which is the percentage of possessions that end in a turnover. Last night, though, it was rough. Okay, the game got out of hand there in the third quarter. And it's because Nikola Jokic understands something that Tyrese Halliburton just hasn't quite figured out yet. Even when you're a pass-first guy, when you're a gifted scorer like Jokic and Halliburton are, you have to have segments of games where you just kind of take over. And that's what Nikola Jokic did. He finished the game with 18 points. 10 of those points came in the third quarter. He only scored 2 points in the fourth quarter, but we'll get to his fourth quarter stuff here in a minute. Jokic had 10 points and 5 assists in the third quarter. And while he did that, Tyrese Halliburton hit a 3 and tallied 2 more assists. And that ended up being the difference in the game. And look, it's not fair of me to compare Tyrese Halliburton to Nikola Jokic. But look, if the Pacers want to win a title, probably not this year, but at some point, this is the next step in Halliburton's progression. He has to raise his play when the Pacers need it. Because from time to time, the Pacers are going to need him to take over for a 4-minute stretch where he scores 8 points and has 3 assists. Okay, because when you have a player do that, chances are you're going to either close the gap or extend the lead. And the Nuggets extended the lead in that third quarter, outscoring the Pacers 36-25. And it's because Nikola Jokic was just you know what? I'm going to be great for this 5-minute stretch. Good luck stopping us. And Halliburton didn't have that in him. He tried to kind of turn that on in the fourth quarter. The issue was it felt like it was just kind of too late when he became aggressive in the fourth quarter. Because early in the fourth, Jokic usually doesn't play to start in the fourth quarter. And the Pacers came out and they tried to make a push early, but they just couldn't quite cut the lead down to single digits. They had a couple chances, but they just couldn't score on those possessions. And eventually, Jokic comes back into the game with 7 minutes and 24 seconds left. The Nuggets were up by 10. Pacers cut the lead to 7 with about 6 minutes left, and they never got closer than 7 points to the Nuggets. They had multiple opportunities to hit like a big three that would have cut the lead down to 4, but they missed all of them, and that was kind of it. And then to close the game, we got 4 minutes and 45 seconds of Nikola Jokic just kind of taking over once again, something that Tyrese Halliburton, as much as I enjoy watching him play basketball, just doesn't do enough of. With 4 minutes and 46 seconds left, the score is 111-104. The Nuggets were winning. The Nuggets would have the basketball 7 more times, and they would score on all 7 of their final 7 possessions. Here's how they scored. Jokic assist to Brown. Michael Porter Jr. assist to Aaron Gordon, but that assist only happened because Jokic got doubled and made the right pass. Another Jokic assist to Brown. A Jokic assist to Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. then got a bucket on his own. Jokic then scored a flip shot, and that was the game. That was how the game finished. Okay? The Nuggets ended up winning 125-116 because the best player in the world, the best player on the Nuggets, when the game was late and they needed to make a play, Jokic made the right play every single time. And when the Pacers had multiple opportunities to cut the lead to 4, they missed all of those shots. All of them. Every single one of them. And, Jokic, he ended up finishing the night with 18 points and 19 assists, which is just insane. Halliburton's box score numbers look good. Like, if you didn't watch the game and you just kind of graze box scores, you're like, oh, they didn't rebound very well. And then you move on, which is part of the issue. But the other issue is, like, Halliburton's box score numbers look good. 19 points, 15 assists. But he didn't become aggressive in scoring the ball until the fourth quarter. Like, he has to look to score sooner. Right? Like, that third quarter where Jokic kind of pushed the lead out and the Pacers didn't really respond, like, that ended up being the difference in the game. And, once again, like, it's hard to rip Halliburton for not being as good as Nikola Jokic, who, once again, is the best player in the world. But at some point, like, this has to click for him. It has to. Only, not taking a non-3-point shot until there were, 8 minutes and 45 seconds left in the game is just not acceptable. Like, that's just like that just can't happen. Like, he has to get into the lane more. He knows this. I'm sure that they talk about this all the time. But, it's just eventually, like, he has to do it. Jokic, though, he's just insane. He's just this amazing basketball player. When he's on the floor, the Nuggets are the best team in the NBA. Okay, like, and I will stand by that. So we'll kind of see how the Nuggets wind up going through, the rest of the season. Like, they're good enough to win the whole thing because they have that guy. We'll see. The Pacers, like, it feels like they're close. They just kind of need for Halliburton to take that next step. Like, when he takes, let's see, how many shots did he take last night? When he took 11 shots last night, 10 of them were threes. Like, that can't be what his shot chart looks like. Can't. Like, it has to be better than that. Okay? Like, he played 40 minutes and he took 1 shot that wasn't a 3. He only took 2 free throws. Like, that's just not acceptable. It's not acceptable in the slightest. He has to do a better job at getting to the rim because that is where he and the rest of this Pacers team are at their best. Okay. By the way, Jokic finished the night plus 17, by the way. They were minus 6 in the 9 minutes he was off the floor. He's incredible. Anyway, that's going to do it here at the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Tomorrow, going to be a lot of Indiana basketball stuff. They are going to try. They're going to try to make a push to make the NCAA tournament. They host Penn State tomorrow night. That is a game that they should undoubtedly win. They should win that game, but Penn State, not the easiest team in the world to play against. I'm going to tell you why tomorrow on my show. We'll go from 10 to noon as always, and then Thursday and Friday I'll be live from the Combine. The Dan Dockett Show is set to come your way next. A nice show lined up for you. Dave Refson of the Big Ten Network, he's set to join the show at 1:30, and then Chad Withrow from Outkick Sports, he's set to join the show at 2:00. So nice guests. It's Dan. You know it'll be good, fun, and entertaining. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way next, and I will talk to you tomorrow starting at 10 a.m.